Today I'm here with Bill Gallagher. Bill is from New Mexico. He served 4 years in the Air Force, and he's also writing a book called Devilvision, the book. And he's here to talk to us today about chemtrails. Bill?
Hello, Gina. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you? And thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Yes, the first chemtrails I actually saw were in the 70s, the late 70s, over MacDill Air Force Base while I was in the Air Force. And I did question them because it was during cold weather. It was quite bright blue skies early in the morning, and then these huge white lines would go horizon to horizon. And I questioned that to my superiors on MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa. And they were not really aware of it. They did tell me that it was probably Cuban jets flying at ultra-high altitude, which was later on I found out was a quite erroneous explanation. But those were the first time I saw chemtrails. I don't remember seeing them really in profusion until after 9/11 during this administration. A lot of people are mixed up about what a chemtrail really is. They sometimes call them contrails. They sometimes call them lingering contrails. A contrail means condensation trail, which means water vapor that's actually crystallized into ice. Those will dissipate within 10 to 15 seconds. A chemtrail is a chemical particulate spray that is sprayed out of an aircraft. It is a powder that's run through what's called a deagglomerator. There's quite a number of patents for these devices. And because something that's powdered this finely will tend to become rock hard after a short period of time just by gravity, just by sitting. So they dump these things into these bags of this particulate into a deagglomerator as the plane is flying, or it's an automatic feed. And then this particulate is sprayed out in these broad, well, they start as very thin, but then they broaden quickly, white lines that will cover half the sky or even go horizon to horizon on occasion. These are sprayed to achieve many different energy effects. A lot of it has to do with environmental modification. A lot of it has to do with mind control. Along with the particulate, there's things like benzene and even ones I heard of formaldehyde. They're petroleum substances that are used along with the powders that are sprayed. Sometimes the powders are barium, sometimes they're aluminum oxide, sometimes they're pure metallic particles. But anyway, the reason I bring that part up is that there's different kinds of particulates and ingredients in the chemtrails, and they do different things. There's many different kinds of experimentation going on. A lot of it, if not all of it, is human experimentation, which was authorized through Emergency War Powers Act back in Nixon's time and even before.
Can I ask you a question? Because you mentioned all these different chemicals. You said the barium salts and aluminum, and I've read in the paperwork that you sent me that they're also dropping radioactive thorium. How does all that work in with mind control?
Well, what we have is conditioning that's happening. I haven't heard of the radioactive, but I don't discount anything. I know that we have discovered, Clifford Carnicom at carnicom.com has discovered quite a number of biologicals, up to and including human cells and blood, and some of the particulate that's been sampled out of these raining downs. Because every time they spray during the day, in the evening you have what's called an inversion, where the ground air rises and what is up above drops down, to be simplistic about it. And so during the inversion, whatever gets sprayed during the day, the people are getting dosed with at night. The barium salts, I'm not too sure about that. I know barium oxide for sure. I'm kind of deviating from your question, though.
No, you're not. You're fine. You're right on target.
All right. Well, there's conditioning that's going on, especially with the metallics. In the last 10 or 15 years, we've had a plethora of electronic antenna installed in our environment. Before 1996, people were able to pretty much restrict where these things were sited and keep them away from hospitals and schools and such. Then Bill Clinton, in his ultimate wisdom, decided that our wireless grid was much more important. His, I can't remember how his legacy, that's what he calls it, was much more important than the public health. So then they removed those restrictions, and these antennae are going up everywhere. probably everywhere that are hearing this will be able to look around themselves as I speak and count maybe 5 or 6 antennae at any given time. Even in rural situations, most people are aware of these massive microwave so-called cell towers. A lot of the chemtrailing is to propagate energy and to induce a basic constant field, electronic energy field in conjunction with the antenna. There's also satellites involved, but that's a little bit beyond the scope of the discussion right now. To get to the point about the particulates, whenever you ingest anything, as we've been ingesting it by breathing it, eating it, and drinking it, it's inescapable. Now, for the last 8 or 9 years at least, our bodies are becoming conditioned. We have taken these chemicals into our bodies. If they are metallic in content, that's going to make us jump a whole lot better to the wireless energies that are being broadcast, and that equates to electronic mind control. There's no argument. No one can gainsay that, because it just makes common sense. I mean, if you're taking in chemicals and metallized particles, then electricity is going to, the electrolyte of your blood is going to be much more conductive to all kinds of energy, not just the broadcast energy. But back in the 50s, the first experiments with active auroras, like the Aurora Borealis, was a project called Project Argus, and they were exploding nuclear bombs in portions of the electromagnetic field of the Earth in order to see what would happen. What they found out is that it augmented many of these natural auras and lines of force, because you've seen where you take a magnet and you put a paper over it and sprinkle iron filings on it, and the pattern that it makes, those are the lines of force, magnetic lines of force. Well, the planet has those too. So they began altering all this back in the 50s. During these studies, a man named Mr. Schumann, W.O. Schumann, discovered that our planet has a song all its own. They named it after him. It's called the Schumann Resonance. And it's about 7.8 hertz, which is 7.8 pulses per second cycles, which is extremely close to the same frequency the human brain operates at. That's because we evolved to that over thousands of years. Just by the Schumann resonance isn't just 7.8 hertz. That's the primary frequency, and it has multiples that are not quite double of that. But the 7.8 is very close to our brain frequency, and it was altered with Project Argus and 30 or 40 other projects that took place before it starts going into the classified fields. They discovered then, during this time, that by exploding these bombs in the magnetosphere of the planet, that it affected human activity below. It affected the way people think. What they did find out also is that the auroras, like the Aurora Borealis, were augmented with this energy so that they became, in effect, giant antennas on their own. They found out that they could broadcast via antenna. They could use the Aurora Borealis as a gigantic antenna to view over the horizon or communicate with submarines deep, deep below the ocean surface. So this made them think of many different things. By this time, the Navy had also become privy to a lot of the Tesla technology, which again is another story, but is very intricate to a very integral part of all this technology that they're using with the chemtrails and the antenna and the satellites today. The chemtrails themselves, once they're sprayed, it's very involved. It's multi-tiered and multifaceted. It's also very expensive. When they're first sprayed, you have grids, you have lines, you have quantum energy devices in the atmosphere. This is energy harvesting, solar energy harvesting, according to the HARP patent, which is antenna technology. HARP stands for High Amplitude Atmospheric Research Project, or something like that.
High Auroral, isn't it high Auroral active? I can't even get it right.
high altitude or high amplitude